Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Only Endometriosis podcast you need. In today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I don't really talk about much on this podcast, but that I do talk about a lot in the flip side of my business, and that is the women's health strategy. In 2022, the UK government announced a 10-year plan to address health inequalities in the UK. They recognised that the provision for women's health, support for women's health, awareness of women's health issues was woefully substandard compared to either men's health, the provision of health for men, not necessarily just men's health issues, but also compared to other areas of the world. So the government, it was actually a cross-party initiative. So the cross-party initiative, the Women's Health Panel took all of the findings of about two and a half years of research and feedback and compiled this 10-year women's health strategy. And we are now 2 years in. And the government today when I'm recording, released their 2-year review findings. And I just kind of want to talk a little bit about it, really, because this is something that I'm obviously very passionate about. In the flip side of my business, I do go into companies, into big organisations, small organisations, and talk about the impact that women's health has on their workforce. I talk about menopause, I talk about endometriosis, obviously I talk about polycystic ovaries, I talk about fertility, pregnancy, baby loss, I talk about all the things that that women either struggle more with or that impact greatly on women. And this is exactly what the Women's Health Strategy is about. So the Women's Health Strategy is about the inequalities in the system. It's about how women are treated by specialists, by doctors throughout the NHS, throughout the healthcare system. But it's also about workplaces. So Section 7 of the Women's Health Strategy deals exactly with that issue. It's how women are dealt with at work. So in this podcast, I'm not going to necessarily get all evangelical about women's health at work. If you do want to hear me talk about that, then please do come along to my workshops. I offer free and paid for workshops on a whole range of women's health at work topics. But this podcast is more just to let you know that there actually is a women's health strategy, because when I talk to a lot of people, I've been to a networking event and I mentioned the women's health strategy, and a lot of people hadn't actually heard of the strategy. They didn't know that there was a strategy in place. It's a difficult one because you don't necessarily need to know it's there. What we need to know is how it's helping us, and what we need to see are the changes that the women's health strategy is, I'm not going to say promising, but is kind of hinting that it will bring about. The Women's Health Strategy is a massive document. I'm not going to talk about the whole thing, don't worry. I'm just literally going to talk a little bit about the key findings of this update report and what they are planning as priorities in 2025, because I think this will, or potentially could be, really impactful in women's lives. And the more we talk about it, the more that we talk about it to doctors, to nurses, to friends and family, the more pressure, in a very gentle way, that we will put on strategic healthcare commissioners, on decision makers to actually make it happen. So, like I say, the document is massive. And in the review, they've kind of highlighted 3 main areas that there's been the biggest area of progress in. So the first one is, not necessarily in any order, but the first one is affordable HRT. So one of the things that was highlighted in the report was that there was massive inconsistencies in the availability and the price when it comes to HRT support for women going through menopause. And the review highlights that this has massively changed, that HRT is now more affordable than ever. There are still issues around accessibility. There are still issues in the supply chain in terms of women getting HRT. I have my own theories on that. I think it's maybe kind of flipped so far the other way, and HRT is now, don't be mad, but almost like too accessible. A lot of doctors are prescribing it in the same way that they used to prescribe other things like flu jabs and things, quite free and easily, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that some women who do need it aren't getting it. But the report highlights that this is still way better than it was. Women across the UK, or England and Wales actually, apologies to my Scottish brethren, but women across England and Wales are now having much more stable equitable and affordable access to HRT. I would educate that the information and the education around HRT and menopause is still woefully lacking, and I think that is something that the strategy recognises, and that's something that women like me are here to rectify. So again, the more we talk about it, and I don't mean talking about it in terms of scaring each other with how horrendous it is. I actually had a conversation the other day with a lady who said she was absolutely terrified of the menopause, and that mirrors so many conversations I have, and it's so sad because the menopause isn't actually anything to be scared of. I had a conversation this morning with somebody who said the menopause has been an absolute fabulous thing in her life, that her hormones have balanced. She's not getting any of the symptoms that she's had pretty much for all of her post-puberty life, and she has welcomed her menopause with open arms. We just don't share those good stories, so let's share the good as well as the bad. So that's the first thing. The second highlight of the progress against the strategy was the implementation of women's health hubs. And I have seen a couple of these go up, but now every area is being encouraged to follow suit and have their own women's health hubs. I would argue that we still need to include stuff that I go on about all the time. So the natural stuff, the holistic stuff, the alternative, if you like to call it alternative or complementary, whatever label you want to put on it. But this kind of lifestyle medicine, this complementary side of symptom management, of symptom reduction, needs a much better representation in those hubs. But those hubs are going up. There are places where women can now go and get access to the information. Again, the information needs to be good information, positive information and realistic information, but the hubs are there, and one of the priorities for next year is to extend that even further across England and Wales. And then the third area that the review's highlighted in terms of progress is the enhanced postnatal care and benefits for new mums. And I have to say that I'd love to know your thoughts. So if you have been involved in any aspect of postnatal care this year, the feedback that I've received is that the care is patchy, that the quality of care is patchy, and that the availability even of care is patchy. And it's very much not only a postcode lottery. I've been saying it's a postcode lottery, but it's not just a postcode lottery. It's almost a lottery in terms of the individual staff member that you deal with at the time. So I'd love to hear your thoughts if you do have any experience of that. In most recent times, I'd love to know whether you think it's improved and whether the standard of care was something that you could be not necessarily proud of, but something that you would recommend to other people. So moving forward, priorities for next year. Again, the three main priorities. It's really, really nice to see. It's stuff that we've been talking about for a long time, and it's stuff that we know that we absolutely need. So the first, again, in no specific order, the first priority is addressing menstrual health conditions. So in terms of waiting times, in terms of quality of information, in terms of research and expenditure at government level, they are going to be increasing the focus on conditions like polycystic ovaries, fibroids, and endometriosis. Endometriosis is always cited in these studies, and whilst it's fabulous, as you know, I've had endometriosis for 20 plus years. I was diagnosed in my early 20s, mid 20s, and I'm a massive, I was going to say advocate for endometriosis, but that sounds really bad. But I'm a massive advocate for people who have endometriosis. But I do feel sorry for people with adenomyosis and fibroids and polycystic ovaries because we don't talk about them enough. And more women have those conditions than have endometriosis. Fibroids is the most common issue that people have. Of course, there's kind of dual diagnoses and misdiagnoses, and it's not necessarily about the label, as I keep telling everybody. But if we're talking about menopause, we need to be talking about women's health. If we're talking about endometriosis, we need to be talking about other conditions as well. So it's great to see that endometriosis is listed, and it's also great to see that adenomyosis, fibroids, polycystic ovaries are also included as well. And it's nice to see that women's health is being listed separate to menopause. I use menopause as a way in of talking about women's health because menopause is now kind of a hot topic. It's kind of something that people, men and women, workplaces, are feeling a lot more comfortable talking about. And it's a great way in to talk about wider period issues as well, where there's still a bit of a barrier talking about. So the second priority, again, is supporting preconception care and pregnancy loss, which is a massive, massive topic. Again, massively underfunded, massively undersupported. So it's great to see that that's now one of the priorities for next year. And the third one that I want to touch on is including women's health in the workplace. Massively, massively important. Like I say, I go into businesses and talk about periods. I talk about the impact of conditions like the ones that we have, endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, and menopause. And even though menopause isn't a condition, but I talk about those all the time. And I talk about the impact that it has on, or can have, at work. So it's great to see that that's going to be a priority next year. So that's all well and good, but on a day-to-day basis, is this actually going to impact you? So I would like to say yes, but I'd love you to let me know. I'd love for you to kind of think about how women's health is viewed in your circle of friends and your workplace, how it's viewed at your GP, and just kind of make a bit of a mental note. I'm not going to ask you to go and do any research for me or do anything formal, but I'd just love you just to make a mental note and just see over the next 12 months or so how that actually changes, if in fact that does change. Do you have a women's health hub in your area? Do you know whether you have a women's health hub in your area? Are you seeing adverts? Are you getting told about it when you go to your doctors? If you are... Now, again, when we talk about menopause, I saw a thing, I can't remember if it was yesterday or today, I don't know. The days start to blur into one sometimes, don't they? But I saw an article over the last few days where they were talking about, it might have even been in part of this review, actually, I think it was, where they were talking, in fact, it might have been one of these priorities for next year, where they're talking about increasing awareness of menopause in women over 40. And that kind of makes me really sad and mad, as well as glad, because yes, of course we should be raising awareness of menopause. We should be talking about menopause in a realistic and positive way, not toxic positivity, but just realistic and positive. But what we also need to be talking about is the vast amount of women who go through menopause way before their 40s. So we have women who are having hysterectomies, some as early in their 20s. We're having early onset menopause, natural menopause that just starts earlier than 40s. So the more we talk about these things, I know the messages will filter through, but the more we talk about it, the more we get rid of that age thing, that concept that menopause is all about older women. The more we can do away with that, the better, because the more accessible then the information becomes. And I'd love if you are going through menopause, or if you have either had the temporary menopause because of your medication, or you have a surgically induced permanent menopause, whether you find that the level of care, the level of information that you've received has been of a standard, again, that you would recommend. Has it been helpful, or has it caused more issues than it's resolved? And also at work, I don't want to get people into trouble. I don't want to cause stress. So do this only if you feel completely comfortable. But see if your workplace has embraced the flexible working options that the government introduced. And it's massive. When we talk about flexible working, that's one of the biggest things that workplaces can put in place to help people who are struggling with their menstrual health and their menopause symptoms as well. So does your workplace embrace them? Do they have they embraced the new flexible working arrangements? Does your sick leave policy actually mention endometriosis, hysterectomy? What's your return to work policy like when it comes to hysterectomies? When it comes to baby loss? Has your workplace really thought about women's health as a need, and a need in its own right? Do you have things like initiatives like the Cardigan Initiative? I can't remember the name of it, that's what I call it, but I read, this is maybe a couple of years ago even now, where some workplaces have cardigans hung on the toilet doors, so that if you have an incident of flooding, you always have a cardigan that you can put on. I mean, it's really sad that we feel the need to cover up the fact that our blood has leaked through, why we can't just get on, but we don't. We still have a lot of period shame. So does your workplace embrace that? Do you have free period products in the toilets? Are there leaflets? Are there information about menopause? Do you talk freely about pregnancy journeys? How women's health friendly is your workplace? And just as a little aside, if it isn't, then please get your manager or your HR team to give me a ring, because I can absolutely help with that. It doesn't have to be arduous, it doesn't have to be expensive. There are really simple things that workplaces can do to massively be more supportive for women. If you feel able to, then do start talking about your periods at work. Talk about your menstrual health, share your experiences. Again, negative, share your fears, but also talk about the positives. None of us would be here if it wasn't for periods. And I get so many reactions. It was lovely, actually. I had a meeting, I can't remember, a few weeks ago now, I think. And I sort of said what it was that I did. And it was a trades, I think it was a plumber that I was talking to. And my inbuilt reaction, because the reaction I normally get when I talk to men about what I do, is either one of kind of, oh, that's good, change the subject, or kind of they turn a little bit green. But this guy was absolutely brilliant. He said, oh, this is awesome. None of us would be here if it wasn't for periods. I don't know why more men can't talk about periods. I don't know why more of my friends can't go into supermarkets. And he did use the word sanitary towels, but I did forgive him. But why more of my mates can't go into supermarkets and buy sanitary towels for their missus. And that was such a refreshing change. So talk to your male colleagues, talk to your male friends, talk to your male families about period products, about periods. And the day-to-day reality, not just when it gets tough, not just when you're struggling, but actually the beauty of periods as well. Periods and menstrual cycles are almost magical. And I can just hear you tutting or laughing when I say that, but they really are. They are, once you're in tune with your menstrual cycle, it's incredible how powerful it can actually make you, because once you understand the impact of your own hormones on yourself, on your life, on how you react to things, on how you don't react to things, suddenly it's like shining a light on a lot of areas of your life. Talk about that, talk about those experiences. Use social media as well to talk about it. Again, I don't want you to go out of your comfort zone, but the more we start talking about I think that's probably another podcast actually, but when we talk about comfort zones, we talk about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. But actually, if you're a sensitive woman, I don't know why I said woman, if you're a sensitive person, or at particular times of your cycle, the last thing you want to be doing is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, because fight or flight is never really a good place to sit in for any length of time. So don't go out of your comfort zone. Stick with what you're comfortable doing, but do kind of try little bits of conversations, but only where you feel safe to. So yes, I just want to reassure you that there is a women's health strategy in the UK, that we are 2 years into the women's health strategy, that progress is being made. Obviously, all of these things take time. Mental health has been on a massive, massive journey these last probably 10 years. And it really has taken 10 years for there to be a level of acceptance around mental health, for those taboos to be broken down. And even then, they're not kind of systemically broken down, but there is a lot more acceptance of mental health issues, both at home and in the workplace. And menstrual health, period health, is on the same journey. So it is going to take time for these things to filter through. But if we can all do our small part, then those changes will filter through even quicker. Share podcasts. You don't have to share mine. It would be lovely if you did. But share podcasts, share resources. If you listen to audiobooks, whatever it is, wherever you get your information from, share those episodes. If you have friends, if you know of family members that would benefit, share resources between you. Let's start those conversations going. Let's add to this government drive. Let's make the government drive easier. Let's give it a path of least resistance. And like I say, if you would like me to come into your workplace and bang on about periods, talk about menopause, offer support, I do offer some of my self-treatment programs, the endometriosis problem periods, whatever else I've got, menopause, I can't remember, 41 Days to Fabulous, I talk about that quite often, don't I? But all of these are licensed as well, so workplaces can buy them on license for their staff as well. So I've got that element of support. So there are other people out there as well that do similar things. So please do encourage your workplaces to have these conversations. And if they do need ongoing support, then please do drop me a line. I hope that's been helpful. If you didn't know about the Women's Health Strategy, then I hope that's been enlightening. If you did know, I hope that you found the slight update on the progress to be, I don't know if you'll think it's good progress or mediocre progress, but at least there is progress happening. And like I say, let's see if we can, even in a small way, start conversations and and empower other women to start conversations, because that power of a collective voice of women coming together. I think it was Helen Keller that said together, what is it, alone, oh, 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 my mind's gone blank. I'm sure she said something like, alone we are ineffective, together we can achieve so much. So let's channel that. Let's have this collective voice, collective action, and advocate for each other if we can't advocate for ourselves. Until next time, stay well, and if you need anything at all, you know where I am.